Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of An Extra Slice of History with the Butterfly Princess. This is a sort of a sister show of the sister show of a slice of history with the Butterfly Princess, which episodes are released every Tuesday. And this is where I take you on, I give you, tell you about an extra side of history, so you get 2 doses of history per week from me. This week, I'm going to be telling you about the fashions of the Tudor period era. Now, I must say that the Tudor period is one of my favourite periods in history. I love to learn about Henry VIII and his 6 wives and everything in between. But I'm also learning and learning about all the Tudor monarchs as well. So this week we're going to talk about fashion during that fascinating period between, especially during Elizabeth's reign between 1558 and 1603. So here goes. So the use of fabrics in clothing were used a lot during the Tudor times, and these fabrics was used as a way to show off the social standing, how a person was standing in society, whether they were rich or poor or middle class or whatever. So the type of, obviously, the material that was used in the Tudor period sort of reflected on the hierarchy of the Tudor the society. So if you had big expensive clothes, you could afford, you were more upper class, but the lower sort of clothing you wore means sort of you were lower down the social ladder, if you will. Wool and silk was worn by all members of society, so it doesn't matter where social standing was in society during the Tudor period. There was always sort of wool and silks. Now, obviously, there was different types of wool and silks. Now, obviously, if you were poor, if you were, rich, you could afford the more wealthiest type of wool and silk. But if you were a bit more poorer or a lot less well off, then you could only afford sort of the cheaper end of wool and silk. So how would sort of a normal woman dress in Tudor period? Now, in the Tudor period, now this would relate to a woman who wasn't a member of the royal court, so they were just everyday people like you and I. They got on with living every day to the society. So in the 16th century, because obviously that's when the Tudors ruled, they ruled from 1485 from the Henry Tudor, who was victorious at defeating Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth, and they ruled from 1485 until the death of Elizabeth I in 1603. So their dynasty came to an end the very beginning of the 17th century. So in the 16th, if you were a woman in the 16th century and you sort of lived within the period, you would sort of wear something called a kirtle. This would be worn over a thin undergarment called a smock. So you will have that or under it, and then so that was what the basic wardrobe of a Tudor woman would look like. They would have the girdle worn over a linen under a linen garment called a smock, and then for the more wealthier woman of society, she would sort of wear something that was called a petticoat. So this is a very fancy sort of like jacket or a long sort of jacket or something. Now, what is a kirtle? You may ask. Well, a kirtle was a piece of clothing that conspired top and bottom sections of a silk and a lace sort of bodice. Bodice and within this bodice it would have a stiff canvas for support, to support the breasts or whatever, or chest area. And then also a woman would wear a full skirt with a front silk, and this would be fitted to each woman's measurement. So a woman would be measured individually depending on their measurements, and they will be measured up by different tailors, and all again this all sort of depends of the social standing. So it will depend whether you were rich or poor, what sort of clothes you will, what sort of petticoat and a kirtle you will be measured up for. So going back now to wealthier women, they would obviously wear more a petticoat, they would obviously want to display their wealth through their fashion, obviously, because people in them days wanted to show off money. So like they would show off their wealth and prestige and money through their fashions. So they would wear something like a layer of clothing, and underneath they would sort of wear sort of a petticoat, which was sort of a long jacket or something, or a dress, and this would be in the finest in the finest silks and crimsons and brightest colours. We're going to look now at sort of what the men sort of wore in the Tudor times. So men did it in them days for underwear. Men didn't, wear, like boxer shorts and underpants. Instead, in Tudor times, men would wear what was known as a hose, and this would be like a long fitted shirt and a tightly fitted leg covering, so that would cover the genital area or the legs, to keep them warm. It's not like we wear today. We wear like women wear knickers, but guys and lads wear boxer shorts and underpants. They didn't wear boxer shorts in them days. So this long shirt and tightly fitted leg coverings would act as a form of underwear to cover the genital area, the men's genital area, and the legs. So the hose was like, depending on the type of fabric, the hose was in, that would then be cut specifically to, depending on what that fabric was, the diameter and such. And this would act, and the reason why they did this was to give it a form of elasticity, a lot of movement and free air, so men could get, air to the genital area and stuff. So by the end, as the Tudor period was nearing its end, sort of coming to the end of, the Tudor reign, the hose, the full leg hose, what was known then as the full leg hose, had sort of developed into a more knee length, sort of knee length breeches, and these would be made from other fabrics such as leather, silk, and wool. Again, this depended whether you were on the status of whether you were rich or poor in your wealth. So depending on whether you were rich or poor in your status in society, you could either have breeches made from leather, wool, or silk. So the codpiece, this acted as the ultimate men's accessory during the Tudor area. The codpiece became very, very popular during the mid-15th century. So during the time, when the Tudor period was in full swing. Yeah, so that for that them sort of things. And what was the purpose of, this codpiece? Well, the purpose of the codpiece was to act as a functional purpose by fastening the basis cut holes and covering the crouch area. Obviously, the crouch area, we know is where, the top of the leg, where the genital area is, because you didn't want your private, we didn't want the genitals slipping out, so that served to cover up that area. And during as time went on, sort of these cod pieces evolved into more elaborate items of clothing, to the extent where men sort of view the codpiece as a very high, garnet with with lots of pretty decorations to show off, their house in the highest fashion that they could afford. So nobody really knows the exact reason for the increasingly the increasing popularity of the hose. But it's believed that they combine both two elements. So they both combine the two elements of comfort, because obviously a man had to be comfortable, especially down there. There's nothing worse when, even for a woman, is there? There's nothing worse when you're feeling a bit uncomfortable down there. It needs air to breathe and, to ebb and flow and everything. And it also was believed to adhere to not only a comfortable element, but also to show off again your social standing, to show off how rich or poor you were, depending on your social standing in society. Like in today's society, people people often wear a lot of, controversial pieces of clothing that not every member of society will deem fit or suitable. People, tend to go around these days with like the boobs hanging out, or not everything that doesn't necessarily fit to their figure. And the Tudors were no stranger to this. They also wore a number of controversial, style items and garments in their time as well. So, for a man in the Tudor times, they would wear something, what was known as a doublet, and this was sort of like a very short, padded jacket, fitted and buttoned at the front, often paired with a jerkin. This was a jerkin was another like fitted item of clothing that was worn around the torso area of the body. Um, um, and women would wear a lot of long gowns and dresses, um, formal and special occasions. So, like, the women, especially, the women of the court, the Tudor court in the times of the Tudors, they would often wear long fitted gowns to attend dances and dinners and things at the palace. And obviously, things like that. And also women would wear uh, excuse me, women would wear a lot of accessories to accessories. The one notable the one most popular piece of accessory for a woman to wear in the Tudor period was what was known as headwear, and this became surprisingly complex. The things to wear, because can you imagine? A lot of women in them days had had very long hair, flowing long hair that came up right down the back. And so to get all that hair into that sort of headwear would be, well, it would take you hours. If you think how we deal with getting dressed for the everyday, people spend hours, washing and drying the hair, and it must have been a nightmare for the servants and for the women of the Tudor period to get that all that long flowing hair into that headwear piece. Um, Now the French hug. Now I mentioned this with sort of um, of sort of excitement because the reason why I'm so in love sort of with this period and I find this Tudor period fascinating is because of Anne Boleyn, which who was the second wife of Henry VIII, and she was like a sort of she's one of my favourite historical characters because of all the intrigue that surrounded her execution and her life, and she was very well known for wearing French hoods as well and she wore very, and by all accounts, she wore very pretty and elaborate ones as well. And these French hoods were for women who were worn by women of a higher social status. So obviously Anne was from a high social status because she was queen and wife to the king. And these French hoods were uh, made with expensive silk and jewels and decorated with expensive pieces of jewels and pearls. Uh, um, so the next one. Colour choices were limited by law during the Tudor period. Uh, so, if you've seen like any, Tudor period dramas on film or TV, or you've researched, Tudor monk, especially like, like when you've seen like pictures of Elizabeth the First, especially the one thing that what brings to my mind that comes to my mind when I think of Elizabeth the First and the fashion she was in was that Spanish Armada painting where she's dressed in all this finery and she's got pearls that are like directed towards her genital area to show her purity because she became known as the Virgin Queen at that time. So, and they were in like these bright colours, but obviously these colours were very limited. I mean, again, it all sort of goes back in a circle, doesn't it? To that scenario of wealth and status and what you could afford depending on your social standing in society. Um, um, so and then so that was for like the more upper class in society. Um, if you were further down the social ladder, you were like more natural, less expensive. What was known as sheep coloured. This was like the norm for like the more poorer people in the Tudor society. So for example, the colour red was produced using dyes such as a dye known as madder and tiny were and tiny so red and then you had another guy which was known as Tanya Cowie. Now this was obviously a much more dearer guy that was much affordable. Obviously, you know, black, well, we associate the colour nowadays, we associate the colour black of the colour of mourning and dark things, but the colour black in the Tudor era was an important colour in the Tudor in Tudor in the Tudor period. So, and then obviously other colours came into the more fashion about. So colours such as yellows, green, and blues became more of a fashion statement in sort of the early 16th century. So at the beginning of the Tudor reign, but obviously these colours decreased in popularity as time drew on. Violet was also a very popular colour during the Tudor period. The reason for the popularity of the colour violet within the Tudor period was because it was a less costly, a less expensive alternative to the colour purple. And the colour purple was mostly reserved for royalty, so members of the monarch's family and so forth. How could people achieve producing the colour violet in the Tudor times? Well, this was they could achieve this by something known as bleeding wood and maggot, and this was a dye obtained from certain lynches, and this was known as the best source for you to produce and obtain the colour of violet. It also remained a popular shade of colouring for clothing for both sexes, for both male and female. And this because it closely resembled the colour of purple, which, as I mentioned before, was largely restored for the monarch's family and royalty. Only members of the royal families tended to wear garments in the colour of purple, and violet was the best other option, the more closely related option to the colour purple. The Tudors were also highly aware followers of the fashion trades of the day. So obviously during the whole course of the 16th century, which is, as I said, was when the majority of the Tudor reign was, this sort of like shifted a great deal, and the fashion sort of have moved on quite rapidly especially in pieces of clothing worn by the noble people and the middle classes of Tudor society. So a lot of for example, a lot of the shapes of skirts shifted and changed, especially in women's fashion. Wealthier women of society would often wear close-fitting and drum-shaped gowns, and and obviously the sleeve developed, so a sleeve on a piece of clothing developed as well during the course of the Tudor reign. So they developed from elaborate feather gale sleeves what with so obviously it wasn't just women's, women's clothing and fashion that had a radical overhaul during the reign of the Tudors. Um, men's clothing and fashion also received, a bit of an overhaul and a revolution. Um, so that particularly in the area of shape. Um, so the most far out thought out alteration in men's clothing during the Tudor period was the appearance of the neckline. So obviously, during the reign of Henry VIII, who was the father of Elizabeth I, they would wear small white shirts with ruffles, uh, um, and then obviously as of like when Elizabeth I came to the throne in 1558, these sort of shirts progressed into more flamboyant ruffles, high necks, and more design in the ruffles to when she came to the throne. Um, Obviously, the change in fashions on the European stage influenced, the fashion of Tudor England. So they would, adapt the fashions of their European counterparts, and 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 that sort of introduced something what was known in them days as hybrid fashion. Now, what hybrid fashion was the result of theft. This was buying people buying clothes of the European style from second hand sort of contacts, and obviously the poorer in society had no couldn't pick or choose where, of course, the clothes came from because they couldn't afford it. Um, Now, I just want to finish off by telling you a bit about how people in the Tudor period cared for the upkeep and the fashion of the clothes. So they obviously matters of hygiene and cleanliness weren't as far out as we were today. That was because they didn't know much about hygiene and cleanliness within them times. That was because you know, there wasn't much education. You know, I recently read a book about it was a book by a historian, the historian Tracy Barman. It's a really fascinating book, and I would recommend anyone to read it. It's called The Private Lives of the Tudors, and it goes behind the scenes of like how the Tudors lived. And one aspect, and Tracy Barman does reflect on the point of, you know, poor hygiene of the Tudor period. And it is now believed that, you know, Jane Seymour, the third wife of Henry VIII, who gave him his long-awaited son, but unfortunately died very soon after childbirth. And that is now believed, the reason why she died is now believed to be because of poor hygiene in the labour, and you know, nurses and midwives didn't wash their hands before handling things, much like we do today. Hygiene in our society is a big thing, but it wasn't much of a big thing in the Tudor period. But they did take a very highly cleanliness approach to the upkeep of their clothing. And this would, from the lifespan and the longevity of the clothes, how long the clothes lasted and how often they could be worn. So, for example, people would wear table napery during meals, so this would protect, you know, any spillages of going on the clothes during, you know, meal times. Aprons were worn by both female and males during the working day hours. And also in the Tudor time, women known as washerwomen were employed in some households, and their job was uh, to wash the clothes in riverbanks that were located throughout the various towns. For example, in the town of Nottingham, they had something known as a washing stairs, and this was where flowing water enabled people to clean the garments with water and a bit of scrubbing and so forth. Um, Now, the Tudors tended to care for their outer clothing. This was things that they would wear on, you know, that things that other people would see them wearing, not the undergarments and stuff like that. I think I read as well in the Private Lives of the Tudors that it wasn't uncommon for the Tudors to wear the same item of underwear for several days on end, obviously because that was an inner garment. I could be wrong on there, but I don't think I am. Apologies if I am, and apologies to, you know, for misquoting Tracy Bowman if I am there. Um, so they would wash items of clothing made from wool, and this would remove any sort of stains maintained in garments throughout the day or the wear of the item of clothing. and they would spray alcohol, followed by other more rigorous brushing. And obviously, if you were more higher up, obviously the thing that I've said about Tudor underwear, that was also washed on. Take that comment back. That the Tudor underwear was one of the items of clothing, the undergarments of clothing that was washed on a regular basis to enforcing an air of respect and respect. So that concludes this week's episode of an extra slice of history of the Butterfly Princess. I hope you've enjoyed learning a bit about the fashion during the Tudor period. Join me next time for the next edition join me next week for the next edition of An Extra Slice of History with the Butterfly Princess. Bye bye for now. Take care.